going to talk about some signs and symptoms that maybe you have had that toxic stress response for a long time, or maybe you're experiencing some of those other signs and symptoms like the trauma, like the anxiety and depression. And I'm going to go through and give you some signs and symptoms to see if you may identify. So the first sign and symptom that you may be in this chronic stress response, the stereotype threat. And stereotype threat basically means that you understand that there are a lot of negative stereotypes out there about you and your race and your gender, and you are constantly trying not to act in a way to confirm that stereotype, even if it may be warranted. Let's take the angry Black woman, for example. The angry Black woman is a stereotype that suggests that all Black women are angry all the time. What I have found in my work personally and professionally is that you'll find that Black women are constantly trying not to act in a way that's going to confirm that stereotype threat, which means they're restricting themselves emotionally, they're restricting themselves verbally, and they're restricting themselves behaviorally. And that restriction under a long period of time creates an undue amount of stress that, of course, has an impact. So if you're finding that you're in that space all the time and worn out by that or exhausted about that because you had to engage in a certain way, you are likely operating, trying not to be a stereotype threat. Tokenism is when a lot of companies will claim on paper that they are committed to diversity, but they only want diversity and that person is a token. But we don't necessarily want those contributions. We don't want them at tables. We don't want them to be promoted. And so, or you find yourself being the spokesperson for your race. That is tokenism. And it creates an emotional reaction because you feel stressed about it. You feel like, wait, am I being seen for who I am, or am I being seen because I am the token? Then there's shame. Shame comes when you feel like maybe I don't belong, or maybe I didn't respond in a certain way. A lot of times I find that Black folks don't have the language. They're so stunned, or they're so worried about stereotype threat that they don't respond. And then there comes shame after it. Confusion is also a sign, because confusion usually comes up when we know that there are microaggressions being thrown around, or we know that something's off, or we know that things are inequitable, but we don't have the language for it. When you experience these things for so long, it can impact your mood. And then you start to have depression. So depression is just characterized by at least 2 weeks of a shift in mood. It can come with low energy. You can either sleep more or sleep less. You can feel guilty. You can feel very shameful. And so you could be more irritable. You're having difficulty finding pleasure or meaning in a lot of things. Experiencing at least 5 of those symptoms that I just named for at least a 2-week period, you are battling a depressive episode, which is not uncommon in response to the Black threats that we talked about. Then you also have anxiety. Anxiety is uncontrolled worry. You have a more keyed up, worrisome space that you're in. So if you are vulnerable to anxiety or depression or trauma, and you experiencing it in your environment because you're experiencing all of these threats, then you take that environment and that biological predisposition and you marry them, and then you're going to have these signs and symptoms. And so some people experience this in the forms of mental health concerns, but then also people experience this in the form of physical health concerns. And so we may experience stroke or heart attack, or sometimes other health related conditions when we start talking about food deserts, diabetes and cholesterol. So these are all the signs and symptoms that your threats to Black wellness is taking a toll on you. In some cases, it leads to death.